So before I let you in on the video, I just finished recording the whole video. Hopefully it's not making any noises. I will check it out now. But I do have to put in this segment forward and say that there is a trigger warning for sexual violence, for a lot of misogyny and suicide, animal abuse, um, anything else. I think that's about it. So in general, it is a rather heavy novel that I will be discussing. So please take care of yourself. And if it's something that you wouldn't want to hear now, maybe you can listen to it at a different point in time. And enjoy the video. So I've been meaning to make this video for a long time, and I've spoken about this book several occasions in my previous videos, and I mentioned it in this like very vague manner, but I never really addressed which book the video will be about, because it's meant to be sort of like a surprise and maybe increase some kind of engagement on my channel, because I would like to share my ideas and thoughts with more people, as we all do, don't we? We suffer from the addiction to the algorithm. And it's been a while since I had made 2 attempts at reading this book for this particular reflection video. And one was last year when I tried reading it and I was not able to finish it. And then I had put it down and decided to pick it up again now on my trip to Vienna. And I've been reading it for the last 2 months in small fragments, simply because the book itself is very, very heavy. And also I have a very personal relationship with the book. I read it 20 years ago last time, and it's probably one of the rare books that I reread and that I kept going back to reread particular passages in the book. So yeah, that's what this chat video is about. It's about my experience of rereading my favorite novel 20 years later. And thank you for being here. My name is Alex, and welcome to my channel, where I discuss books that I read for my PhD, but also for pleasure. And this book in particular was for pleasure. But without further ado, which is the book that I'm so mysteriously trying to hide this whole time. The book in question is On Heroes and Tombs by Ernesto Sabato. So I first read this novel, I think, in my late teens, and then I kept going back to it. I was very much obsessed with the novel, and it was very, very difficult for me to stop thinking about it. I became so obsessed with the novel and the work of Ernesto Sabato that I read everything that I could get my grabby hands on. I read all of his novels that are part of the trilogy. He has 3 of them, and then he has several collections of essays. All of his work I previously read in Serbian, and I don't think all of it is available in English. Just recently, I actually purchased another book, and that is Conversations between Borges and Sabato, and I'm looking forward to read this. This is a recent publication by a Serbian publisher called Akademska knjiga. But I don't think he has been translated that much into English, and I'm not really sure why he had so much traction in Serbia. I have written a reflection on my Patreon about the novel, and I mentioned right at the beginning that one of the experiences I had in my 20s was when I met an Argentinian man with whom I would become friends later. When I told him about the popularity of Sabato's work in Serbia, he was rather thrown aback because he didn't think that Sabato was a particularly popular author in Argentina. But I was so obsessed with his work that I ended up at one point also finding a Facebook group that was dedicated to him. And I struck up a friendship there with another Argentinian man where we ended up like mowing over the novel many times, and many years later we did it again and again, and every time we would chat we would return to the moment how we started our communication, basically simply by being both of us so obsessed with the novel that we couldn't let it go. And I think that's one of the aspects about Sabato's work, because you will keep going back to it. At least I did. I don't know. For me, for some strange reason, this novel is really, it has stayed with me. And after rereading it now, at moments I was thinking, what does it say about me when I'm still so fascinated by the story that he's telling us in this novel? And what does it say that I was so um, engrossed by the relationship that he's exploring in the novel? What does it say about me? What people can learn about me by knowing how obsessed I was and still am with this novel. Um, those are some of the reflections I had when I was reading it. I don't have a scripted part for this video, and I'm just going from the feeling and thought that I'm experiencing right now. I actually finished the novel yesterday, and I wanted to reflect on it as things are still fresh in my mind. I was just now writing the reflection on Patreon, and additionally I was going back to some passages in the novel. It is really beautifully written. It's I don't remember how the translation in Serbian was or is. I remember it being good back at the time when I read it, but now I read it in English and it was a very different experience. The translator did an amazing job, and I really need to give the shout out to Helen R. Lane, who is the translator of the novel. So what is the novel about? Obviously, this is the question that you might be asking, unless you manage to go and Google while you are listening to me to find out what the novel is about. The main story that the novel is following is basically a relationship between two young people, Alejandra and Martin. The novel starts off with a foreword, which is newspaper clipping that tells us that Alejandra had killed her father and committed suicide by burning herself with the body of the father in the room where she had killed him. So we right at the beginning we know that she's dead, and now we are taken back to the first moment when she and Martin had met. And this is a really sad story, because Sabato, through the exploration of their relationship, is also telling about the destitute of many people in Argentina at the time. The story is taking place in the 1950s Argentina, and we are introduced also to the political turmoil of the time, although he's giving additional context, historical context on Argentina, and in particular the relationship, the history of Alejandra's family and the demise of her family, which was considered one of the older Argentine families, a very important Argentine family. And through this story, we also explore the political ideologies that are popular at the time, the debates that are very prevalent at the time. And we are also introduced to additional characters throughout the book. And the first two parts of the book, some of the characters are kind of vaguely mentioned. They are there, they are present, they are contributing to the development of the storyline, but they are more referenced and they are given their true voice later in the book. So the novel is divided in 4 parts, and first 2 parts explore the relationship that Martin is trying to build with Alejandra. And the third part is a report that Alejandra's father, Fernando, had written. It's called Report on the Blind. And the last part is sort of like a mixture of everything that we see in the previous, or everything that we read in the previous 3 parts of the novel. And it all comes together. Sabato is very good at traveling geographically and spatially, and in time when he's retelling the story. So you would be engrossed in the present moment when things are taking place, but also at the same time you would be hearing the reflection that comes later in the trajectory of the events. So he's very good at segmenting these parts, but he's also very good at layering it in the same sentence even. And in particular, South American fashion, he's able to write these lengthy sentences and lengthy reflections that sort of are some kind of like meandering of the characters themselves. The last segment of the book that I would like to address now is basically a reflection that Bruno has on the story, on the events that took place, and he also reflects on his childhood and his youth. Namely, Bruno is Martin's friend who is well familiar with Alejandra's family. He was in love with her mother, Georgina. And Martin, throughout the novel, is going to him for comfort, and he's trying to find answers to the questions that he has about the relationship he has with Alejandra, and namely, he's trying to understand why she's behaving the way she is. So Bruno is also a crucial character in the novel, and we hear a more in-depth perspective from him in this 4th part. We also hear Martin again reflecting on the sequence of events and trying to kind of understand what has happened, what transpired, what led to Alejandra to kind of do what she did. So the relationship between Martin and Alejandra is very toxic. We right in the first page, we see him. It is a very kind of dark scene setting where he's sitting on a bench in some park in Buenos Aires, almost falling asleep over like like a newspaper article that he was reading, and he's kind of despairing about the situation in his life. Namely, he's struggling in his work. He comes from a very impoverished family. His mother has not is a very cruel woman, and she has treated him rather cruelly. And right at the beginning, we are exposed to the daily realities that he is facing. And we see a moment of this um, kind of like dream world colliding with reality, where he's sitting on a bench and slowly dozing off, but at the same time he feels a presence of a particular person looming over him. He's not really understanding what this presence is, and Sabato is so good at explaining this part. Like he's like vividly exploring it, like the internal feelings that Martin has, but also how it is encompassing to his psyche in that particular moment. And he does this throughout the whole novel. It's really, really brilliantly, masterfully written. And this is when he meets Alejandra, and Alejandra is kind of this like very mysterious figure. She's coming out of the dark, and she herself looks very dark, like dark hair, dark eyes. Her face is very bony, and this is giving us kind of an eerie feeling. And this will actually be an overwhelming representation of her throughout the book. She is represented as this woman who is embodying darkness within her. And she strikes up a conversation with him and kind of basically leaves him with after telling him that she has a romantic interest in her, after she expresses the romantic interest in him, and she just leaves. And Martin is left with this with these words, with these feelings, and out of nowhere this person comes out, and you can imagine he's like questioning it also, whether it's a dream, it's a reality. He's not able to find her. I think like for months he keeps looking for her around the streets, and then at some point they meet again. This is the moment where she brings him into her world, but not completely. She is never allowing him completely to be in her world. And that's one of the reasons why Martin is suffering so much. So their relationship is very, very toxic. Alejandra is telling him that she's gonna meet him. She doesn't show up. He's looking for her, and he's trying to play this game with her. He's trying to outgame her, but it's just not simply possible. There are moments where she's just she just seems like she doesn't care, but when he asks her questions and requires a moment of care expressed from her, she just keeps going to this one particular moment when she said that she cared about him, and this is what I told you, and that's how it is, and why are you still questioning this? Why are you doubting? She's kind of very much putting the blame onto him when it comes to the needs that he has as a man who is in love. So this is basically what the book revolves around. We are trying to understand, why is she doing this? He is trying to understand, why is she doing this? Why is she behaving like this? What can he do to get through to her? And is there really anything that he can do to receive the love that he craves so much from her? But of course, I mean, I'm diving really, really deep here, and in some aspects, and parts of the novel, you really do hope that he will get what he needs, but at the same time you're thinking, what are you doing? Just walk away from it. This is crazy. You are putting yourself through so much pain when you know that this person is not going to give you obviously what you need. But he's so young. I think in the novel he's like, at the beginning of the novel he's 17. So I'm gonna read some parts that I think that are just beautiful reflections that Sabato has in the novel. And I think this is one of the reflections that, this is one of the reflections that Martin has about Alejandra. It's on the page 31. This is a Penguin publication. He says, and so it was, Martin explained, that the whole terrible story began. Everything had been inexplicable. You never knew what would happen with her, and they met in places as absurd as the lobby of the Banco de Provincia or the Avellaneda Bridge. And at any hour, at 2 in the morning sometimes, everything was unexpected. Nothing could be predicted or explained. Neither her playful, joking moods, nor her sudden rages, nor those days when she never once opened her mouth from the time they met till she suddenly upped and left, nor her prolonged disappearances. And yet that was the most wonderful period of my life, he added. But he knew it couldn't last because the whole thing was hectic. It was, had he already said as much, like a series of gas explosions on a stormy night. Although times, very few times, it is true, he did seem to have restful moments with her, as though she were someone suffering some illness, and he a sanatorium or a place in the mountains to which she had betaken herself to lie in the sun in silence. At other times she gave the impression of being in torment, and it was as though he might be able to offer her water or some sort of remedy, something indispensable to her, so that she might return once again to that dark, wild realm in which she appeared to live her life. I mean, it's just, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's so beautiful. It has these prolonged reflections on the scenery, on the moods, on emotions, philosophical reflections, political reflections. I really love the part where he reflects on what is Argentina and what it means to be Argentinian. I'm just going to try and find it now. Here it is. It's on page 169. Hold on a second. So then Martin thought, looking at Tito, who was looking at his father, what is Argentina? Questions that Bruno would often answer by telling him that Argentina was not only Roses and Lavalle, Gauchos and the Pampas, but also, and how tragically, old D'Arcangelo, with his little green bowl and his far-off look, and his son Umberto. J. D'Arcangelo, with his mixture of skepticism and tenderness, resentment against society, and inexhaustible generosity, spontaneous sentimentality, and analytical intelligence, chronic despair and anxious, undying hope of something. We Argentines are pessimists, Bruno said, because we have great reserves of hope and illusions, for in order to be a pessimist, one has to be previously held out hope for something. We are not a cynical people, though the country is full of cynics and fat cats. We are rather a tormented people, which is the precise opposite, for the cynic reconciles himself to everything and nothing matters to him. Everything matters to the Argentine, however. He frets and fumes, turns bitter, protests, is consumed by rancor. The Argentine is unhappy with everything, including himself. He holds grudges, he is full of resentment, he is dramatic and violent. Yes, old D'Arcangelo's nostalgia, Bruno said as if to himself. But it's because everything here is nostalgic, because there must have been few countries in the world where this feeling has been experienced so repeatedly. By the first by the first Spaniards because they were homesick for their far off homeland, then by the Indians because they mourned for their lost freedom, the sense of life that had been theirs. Later by the gauchos displaced by foreign civilization, exiles in their own land, thinking back on the golden age of their wild and woolly independence. By the old Creole patricians like Don Pancho, because they felt that the good old days of generosity and courtesy had turned into an age of pettiness and lies, and by the immigrants, finally, because they missed their old homeland, their ancient customs, their legends, their Christmases around the fire. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's just so beautiful. I mean, I can keep on reading particular parts of the book. And there is actually one more part that I would like to address, and well, actually two segments. First one is regarding Fernando, Alejandra's father, who is this very peculiar figure. He is just present in the first two chapters, and Alejandra every time is there are, I think, two moments when he is mentioned in front of her and she just refuses to speak about him. And you do wonder, what is it that her father could have done that she is so reluctant to speak about him? And the third segment of the book is basically this report that he has written on the blind, where he is writing about his fascination with the blind people, and he's developing this conspiracy theory about this group that exists and is like a formation. It's centered around people who are blind and they are running the world. And it's really interesting to read it because at times you can't tell whether Fernando is speaking from the position of the reality that exists or the reality that he's interpreting that exists. So you can really start to doubt what is true, what is not. He's not a very reliable narrator in that sense, but it's sort of like a dream, and it feels at times like it's a hallucination as well. But at times you think he's crazy, and then the way he reflects on particular aspects, politically especially important topics, then you think, oh, he doesn't sound that crazy, but he is crazy. And you're just wondering whether this madness that he has and the obsession and focus on the he has on the blind people, whether this is what has driven Alejandra away from her father. Did she grow up with it? There's so many questions actually that novel leaves you with. You don't get all the answers that you want, and that was my impression the first time I read it. It was also interesting for me once I started reading it, how when I would read certain segments, my memory would come back to light. I remembered these particular scenes, but there are parts of the novel that I've completely forgotten, that are completely erased from my mind. And it was in that sense also interesting for me to explore this third part of the novel, because I remember very little of it. I just remember the feeling that I had when I was reading it, and it was this deep unease. I just wanted to get to the final part to to find out why did she kill herself and her father, and maybe get some answers for myself. But this is actually not what Sabato provides for his readers, and it can be frustrating at times. The fourth part is when we learn a little bit more about Fernando from Bruno's perspective, who grew up with him. They were neighbors, and we learned that this fascination with the blind people and this idea of this like sect that he develops is actually something that happened in his early childhood. We also learned that at a very young age he exhibited signs of psychopathy. He was torturing animals. So I would say that the novel has trigger warning for a lot of things, abuse, animal abuse, just in general, very toxic relations. So if you are not in the mindset to read it, maybe leave it for some other time. Um, Another aspect of this last part of the novel is that we are engulfed in Martin's grief, because the novel is going back and forth between the moment when the event took place when Alejandra killed her father and herself, and some years later when Martin comes back from this sort of self-exile that he imposed on himself, in order to try and overcome the pain and sadness after she killed herself. So I would say that Sabato is very, very good at exploring the grief and how, for some of us, we will not get answers when somebody commits a suicide, and there will be more questions that will come up over the years, and you will ask yourself various forms of a question. Was there something that I could have done to prevent the events from taking place? And in that manner, I would like to turn to this part where he talks about this. It's on page 436. Just a second. I hope it's not making a noise. I've recorded myself for 30 something minutes. I'm not doing this again. Oh, he says, the twilight darkness silently invaded the corners of the room, causing colors and objects to fade away to nothingness. The mirror on the standing wardrobe, cheap and ordinary as it was, began to take on the mysterious importance that all mirrors, cheap or not, take on at night, just as in the face of death all men take in the same profound mysterious importance, be they beggars or kings. Yet he still wanted to see her one last time. He turned on the little night lamp and sat down on the edge of his bed. He took a worn photograph out of one of his inside pockets and, moving a little closer to the night lamp, looked at it intently, as though he were examining a scarcely legible document on whose correct interpretations events of great importance depended. Of the many faces that, like all human beings, Alejandra had, this was the one that belonged most intimately to Martin, or at least the one that had once belonged to him most intimately. A face with a profound and slightly sad expression of someone longing for something that he or she knows beforehand to be unattainable. A face full of desire, but also already full of despair, as though it were possible for desire, that is to say, hope, and despair to manifest themselves at one and the same time. And moreover, a face with that almost imperceptible yet violent expression of hers, of scorn for something, for God perhaps, or for all humanity, or more probably for herself. or for all these things together, and not simply scorn, but also contempt and evil loathing. And yet he had kissed and caressed that terrible mask during a period that now seemed to him to lie far in the past, although it had lasted until very recently, just as once we have awakened. Impressible images that moved us in our dreams or terrified us in our nightmares seem infinitely far away. And very soon now that face would be disappearing forever, along with the room. But Buenos Aires with the entire universe, with his own memory, as though everything had been nothing more than a gigantic phantasmagoria conjured up by an ironic, malevolent sorcerer. And as he further studied that static image, that sort of symbol of impossibility, amid the chaotic thoughts running through his mind, he seemed to glimpse, albeit in a very vague, confused way, the idea that he was not killing himself for her, for Alejandra, but for something more profound and more permanent that he was unable to define, as though Alejandra had been nothing more than one of those mirages of an oasis that cause the traveler in the desert to go desperately onward across the burning sands, and whose vanishing can bring on his death. And yet the ultimate cause of his despair, and hence of his death, is not the false oasis, but the implacable, endless desert. I don't know what to say. I mean, I just love this novel so much, and I am so happy that I finally read it again. I don't think it has changed. It has changed anything for me in the sense that I still love the novel, even though my reflections are a little bit more critical. Um, but the writing is just, his prose is so beautiful. I don't think there are words that I can use right now to describe how beautiful I think they are. Mm, yeah, that's it. I think if anything gets you to pick up any of Sabato's novels, I hope that this video does it for you. And I hope that I made some sense. It wasn't scripted. I didn't come with an idea how I should speak about it. I just went with the overwhelming feeling that it left within me. And I don't know, I'm just really, really happy that he wrote this book and the way he wrote it. Um, yeah, go pick it up and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. You're a stalker. Why are you stalking me? I gave you food. You didn't want to eat it. Why are you stalking me now? Huh? Haydi. Başlama. Tobie si da jedeš. Jesi, nemoj da lažeš. Ali nisi hteo to da jedeš. Evo ga još jedan stalker.